Thank you everybody for joining us this morning. So I'll do some introductions in a moment. If you have any questions as we go through the presentation, please put them in the Q&A panel. And if we have time, we'll answer the questions live at the end. If we don't have time, we'll get back to you via email. The session is being recorded this morning, so the recording will also be shared. So my name is Ben Norcutt. I'm a technical consultant at Somerford. I have a focus on Netskope, and I've been working in the cloud and data protection space for a number of years, probably 8 to 10 years now. And today I'm joined by Timm Sharples from Netskope, so I'll let him introduce himself. Over to you, Timm.
Hi everybody, yes, I'm Timm Sharples. I'm a solutions engineer over at Netskope. I've been working in the IT industry for about 20 years now with a focus on cloud and security. So looking forward to talking to you all today.
Fantastic, thanks Timm. So today's webinar, the second in the series of 4, is about securing data movement. Before we get into the content, so if you don't know, who are Somerford Associates? So we partner with several leading technology companies, obviously Netskope being one of them, but we offer a whole range of resources and services to our customers and our clients. So we've got experience in large-scale deployments of solutions and architecting those solutions, especially in government and commercial sectors. And we also have dedicated security cleared staff in the professional services team, and backed by our project managers as well. So every project we do is managed by one of our PMs. Some of the services that we offer, so we do full license resale and management. We offer use case design workshops so that we can understand your needs and your requirements, and then we can architect a solution to implement, along with all of the other things you can see on the screen. So we do solution pilots, so proof of values, proof of concepts. Business value consulting is a big thing as well, so that we want our customers to get the best value out of the solutions. And we have our own dedicated help desk staff as well, who are trained on all of the solutions, so that we can do that first and second and sometimes even third line support for our products before having to back that off and manage that with our partners. So that's Somerford, and Timm's going to talk you through who Netskope are if you don't know who Netskope are.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So Netskope is a SSE and SASE provider. We have a platform which securely connects users to applications wherever they are and wherever your users are, with the speed and resilience of a modern cloud network. So for us, we're all about the power of one. So having one platform, one agent, one policy engine to deliver all of our services from, so you get that ultimate user experience through not having to have multiple dashboards, multiple consoles, multiple agents to manage. So that's us in a nutshell, and we'll talk more about Netskope later in the presentation.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Timm. I'm just going to turn my camera off while I go through the rest of the presentation so you can concentrate on the content. So first of all, we're going to look at, what do we mean by data movement? So the main thing here is that, the use of applications outside of the traditional data center has evolved. So you may have seen this slide in the previous webinar if you joined us, but we've moved from sort of the traditional everything within the data center, remote users connecting in, hairpinning everybody out to the internet, to today's world. Today's world is massively interconnected. Data is everywhere. So data is moving everywhere as well. It's being created everywhere. So the common theme there is data is everywhere, right? So we've got lots of applications which are being used. Data is coming into the data center. It's going out to SaaS apps. It's being stored in platforms such as AWS and Microsoft Azure. And, keeping track of all of this data, where it is, the sensitivity of data is a massive challenge. So if we look at, what are some of the risks and some of the causes of, potential risk to data. So that hybrid work model that we now have, 60% or over 60% of corporate data is in the cloud these days, and that could be private cloud or public cloud. Global regulations are ever expanding. Obviously, GDPR came in a number of years ago, and that was sort of a bit of a wake-up call and a shake-up to people thinking, we've got to comply, otherwise there's, risk of fines, reputation damage. And even consumers these days, they expect to have their data treated in a secure manner. But the problem is the huge volume of data, right? So most sensitive data will go undetected just because the sheer volume of data that's being created in today's world. So we have to look at, why do we need to change? Why Netskope? And why now, right? So why change? Because of, the regulations and all of this data that we need to secure. Why Netskope? Well, hopefully through this series of webinars and after today, you'll see why Somerford have partnered with Netskope and why we think it's, the best solution for our customers. Why now? Because, we need to make a change. We need to make sure that we're securing our customers' data. So we've talked about zero trust previously. So how do we apply that to data movement as well? So the one constant in every breach is sensitive data, right? It wouldn't be a breach if it was non-sensitive data. It would just be a non-event. But the types of data that are seen in breaches is your PII information, so your personally identifiable information, social security numbers, or the equivalent, ours would be a national insurance number, but credit card details, bank details, driving licenses, passports, addresses, all of that really sensitive personal information. Companies will also have intellectual property, whether they're, a major beverage manufacturer and they have a particular recipe for their drink, or they're a major fast food restaurant and they have a secret blend of spices, right? That is the IP that those types of companies will want to protect. Or if you're, government, MOD type scenario, obviously you're well versed in intellectual property and keeping information secret. And trade secrets, so trading, financial plans, stocks and shares, mergers and acquisitions, all of that is the types of data that's involved in data breaches. So we've got things like, data being exfiltrated either by a bad actor or accidental, sending an email containing a spreadsheet with information on multiple people, being compliant with the regulations, GDPR, PCI if you're processing card payments or health information, and looking at whether it's malicious or is just negligent, right? There are such scope for things to happen inadvertently, but we have to look at how can we protect ourselves from that type of breach. So what's the problem faced by our customers today? Well, so many types of data, so much data being created, so many different formats of data. So we need to be able to look at data in whatever form it's being created. And we need to look at the context as well. So the context is, who is doing the action, where is the data going, what is the source of the data, what is the protection level of the data, what type of data is it? So some of the problems we've seen in the past with customers implementing DLP, and as I say, I've been working with DLP for a long time now, is detecting that data accurately. So inaccurate detection of data has been an issue. False positives, triggering too many false positives, and people get fed up with the solutions. Looking at all of those alerts, it's just a case of there's just too much information. And traditionally, it's been seen as disruptive to the business because people have not been able to do their job because of, older technology, shall we say. So if we look at, where we've come from. So implicit trust is basically if you have access to a piece of data, you had access to it, you could pretty much do whatever you wanted with that data. We had a set of policies, if it's PCI data, you can't copy it to a USB stick, okay? What happens if you're the financial director and you've got some financial information, you need to take it to a board meeting, you need to copy it to a USB stick, you try to do it, you get blocked. You phone up IT and you say, I'm trying to do this for this reason, and then they have to make a change to the policy. So that whole sort of method of discovering the data, looking at what's happening with the data and responding to it, very sort of static, very people heavy to make changes. So now we move to a zero trust policy. So we're always looking at the context of the data, who's accessing it, where is it going, what is the destination, and is it a predefined sanctioned location, and also looking at the behavior of a user as well. What types of data do they regularly access? What types of volume of data do they regularly access as well? So we're continuously assessing the capabilities and adapting the policies to where people are using the data to stop that business disruption. So when we look at any type of data protection implementation these days, we've got to start and do it in a phased approach. So we're looking at who the user is, what device are they accessing our data from. So that's phase one. Okay, so if you think of the zero trust model, it's always authenticate, never just allow. Then we look at that context, right? So what is the activity that's being done? Based on the application, based on the user, based on the device, based on where the data is going. So we can then apply isolation around that. Is this activity, malicious intent? Is it accidental? And, isolate those high risk destinations as well. So it's an adaptive policy. And, we need to have a continuous model here. So we need to continuously investigate, and we need to prevent that sort of excessive trust under a zero trust model. So we always need to be applying least privilege everywhere. And then we're going to do it, and loop back around on ourselves as well. So we're going to look at the results. We're going to look at the trust posture. We're going to evaluate, and we're going to enhance, right? And enhancements these days are also using AI and ML models to actually analyze data, give us that context around the data.
So why Netskope? As Ben's been talking about, you need a solution which is going to be able to cover across all of the different use cases that you're encountering today, and then it needs to be done with the highest degree of efficacy and accuracy, because otherwise, if we get those false positives, that results in delays to deployment. It results in a loss of confidence in the solution, and ultimately, then people start to find ways of bypassing our solution, and our controls ultimately fail. So Netskope is there to provide that highest degree of efficacy and accuracy across all use cases, and then do it by delivering it from the cloud. So utilizing cloud scale and machine learning models to sort of enhance what we can do and provide that consistent approach to securing your data. So if we dig into those three elements in a bit more detail, what do I mean by the channel coverage and providing that comprehensive coverage? For Netskope, it's all about providing the same controls across whatever medium it is that you're accessing that data from, whether it be SaaS applications, which Netskope has a greater coverage than any other vendor on the market, or whether it's through things like the websites and infrastructure as a service, so data stored in Azure and AWS, or if it's actually right through to email and endpoint security as well. So, is someone trying to transfer this data to a USB stick? Are they trying to transfer this data to an internal storage area, to a map drive, essentially? So we can provide that same level of coverage across all those different channels. We then apply our data protection and our protection methods across any different types of identifier as well. So allowing us to very precisely match and detect that data that you're trying to protect. So that can be across simple data identifiers, of which we have over 3,000 just built into the platform, right through to different file types. So being able to detect data within JPEGs or zips or doc files. So no matter where that data is located, where it is stored, we have identifiers which are able to detect that data within that file. We can then apply advanced forms of data matching through things like exact data matching, file fingerprinting, and then using machine learning classifiers and models to start detecting specific things, things like driving licenses, credit cards, and even optical character recognition to detect data in images. So if someone tries to send an image of something like a driver's license, something like a passport, then we can see that confidential, that GDPR data stored within the actual file, within the image. So using those controls, by having the ability to see with such context, we can actually start to allow you a bit more of an allow policy. So rather than just simply blocking, anything which is a file type that we're not sure about, we can say, well, actually, if you want to send a picture of your dog somewhere, then feel free. If that picture of your dog happens to also have a driving license embedded in it, then actually we're going to block that. So we're going to start applying a more precise level of detection to what is being actually transferred, moved around to business. Then ultimately, if we go into some of the detail on that, as I talked about before, we've got those multiple identifiers, multiple file types, but we also simplify this through things like compliance templates. So rather than having to build out your own GDPR, PII, and profiles to detect everything that falls under those compliance frameworks, we provide that for you. So that's built into the platform to really enable users and businesses to get started with applying these security controls quickly and easily. We then include other features, things like training your own machine learning classifiers, because at the end of the day, Netskope can't know everything about your company. So there's going to be things, some data within your organization, which we don't know, which you want to try and protect. And we have these machine learning classifiers for that. So we can upload, copies of, or you can upload to a secure area copies of your data. You can analyze those. It's it's a sandboxed, essentially, machine learning classifier, and it detects what that data is, and then you can use that to actually match specifically your data. So not just what Netskope thinks you should be protecting, but what you think you should be protecting. And then, as you can see further down, some of the other, availabilities we have around, document properties. So if you're, using a document classification system from secret to top secret to confidential, then we can, look at those tags. We can apply our policies based on the tags that you define, whether that is static tags or whether that's dynamic through things like Purview. We've got the ability to detect and provide controls around them. So finally, why else would you go for Netskope? It's a cloud service. So by being a cloud service, it means we can infinitely scale as you do. So if you start today and there's only a small requirement, then absolutely Netskope can support it and will auto scale as your business scales. So unlike a legacy solution where you've got servers in a data center and they need to be patched, need to be upgraded, they need to be expanded, laterally if you grow. With Netskope, you don't have to worry about any of that functionality. You can just focus on your policy. So what it is that you want to protect. And if we then fold this all back into our data protection, our zero trust framework, then this goes in alongside our context as to what we're actually looking at. So we've got risks all over the place. We've got device risks, user risks, data risks, application risks. But if we're focusing on our data and we're protecting our data, then that means we can apply that context to whatever it is we're doing. So whether that user is logged in with their corporate credentials, managed devices, accessing personal instances of data, we can tailor our controls based on what is the context of the activity. So is this legitimate corporate use, or is this actually something which is potentially, malicious or, just accidental, and provide controls around that. So with that, I'm just going to move into a quick demo to show some of these capabilities of what we can do on the Netskope platform. So here we are in our Netskope platform. I'm going to just give you an idea first before we show you what this looks like from an instance perspective. What a user might be doing on a day-to-day. So if we go into our OneDrive, We've got our files that we might be working with. And in this demo, we're going to be focusing on some PII information, which is national insurance numbers. So something which is particularly relevant here in the UK. So if we have a look at what this PII information contains, you see we can go into OneDrive and we can look at that data. So we've got my Timm Sharples, we've got his national insurance number, and we've got a mailing address. So this is quite clearly, GDPR information. For reference, this is not my real details. This is just an example. But this is quite clearly, GDPR sensitive information that we need to protect. Now, when we're doing our day job on a day-to-day basis, we might need to actually work with, individual pieces of data. That's quite common. So say I've got this PI information, I want to take this and I want to work with it offline, then I can go and do that. So I can go and download that information quite happily and I can work with it. Now, if we get to the point where actually, maybe I want to try and work with multiple PI records, multiple instances of that same information. So here we go. I've got 5 users now and 5 national insurance numbers with 5 addresses. Now, at this point, from a business perspective, will someone need to, interface with multiple people at the same time? Probably not. So in this case, actually, if someone's trying to take this data, if they're going to try and download it, we can tailor the system to say, actually, this is too many. So this is far too many pieces of sensitive information being downloaded at once. And we can provide a little bit of a notification to that user as to what they're trying to do. So here we go. We're trying to download multiple national insurance numbers, which we've detected through our classifiers. And then actually this action is forbidden. So according to GDPR, they cannot work with multiple amounts of data. That's fine. Okay, understood. Right. So say I am fairly malicious and I've seen this message. Right. Okay, I might try another way of getting that information. So I might just zip the information up. So actually, can we, provide a different way? Can we, as a nefarious actor, find a different way to get that data? So what we can also do with Netskope is look inside these zip files and look for that sensitive data within the zip file. So we've got an archive file of zipped up information or just below. And if I then try and download this again, we're going to get the same result. So we've got, a notification saying you can't download zip files. But actually, we're looking inside that zip file with this policy, which I'll show you in a minute, to actually look for that specific information. Okay, fine. So we've protected our data from coming out of, our corporate OneDrive environment. So what happens when actually this single piece of information that we did download, we want to try and put somewhere else? So say we're trying to put this into Dropbox. Now, Dropbox might not be our corporate application of choice. So actually, in this instance, maybe we want to stop any kind of GDPR information going up into Dropbox. So if I go and try and upload this information, I've got some test information in here, let's try and upload that. Again, the action is going to be the same. Notice we've got a slightly different notification here, just because this is fully customizable. You can put whatever you want in here to kind of notify and train your users as to what is the correct activities. But the main thing is that we can look inside, uploads going into Dropbox, this time for a very specific piece of information, a single national insurance number, and say, no, this should never ever leave our organization. And this same policy applies to, whether this might be, a document, whether this is, GDPR information, or in fact, whether if actually we're going to try and attach this to an email. So that's the test I was doing earlier there, but we're doing a new email here. If we try and attach the same information up into our email, then actually we're going to scan that file as it's getting uploaded. Not that way, we're not. So if I actually attach the actual file, the link won't work for reference. If I attach the actual file, again, we're going to get the same output because we're able to look into that traffic going up into your email client and saying, no, this is not acceptable. We do not want to allow you to upload that GDPR information. So, okay, and that disappears. Now, if we look at how this looks from a Netskope perspective, because the main thing is this needs to be simple and easy to do. So I'll look into my policies. We've got our real-time protection policies. And we've got a few policies that I've just pre-configured here, which is going to do this, the demos that I've shown you today. So first of all, we're looking at the data being uploaded. So multiple entries into OneDrive. You can see we're classifying the actual application that we're interested in, and then applying the profile to that. And the rest of them, we're just using a generic GDPR profile, which comes built in to detect automatically. So all this can be done in some very, very simple, easy policies, as you can see here. Now, with that, I'm just going to hand back to Ben, and we're just going to look into any questions that might have come up during this presentation.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Tim. Really great to see Netskope in action. I think a key question to ask is, the whole sort of one of the themes of this webinar series is around data sovereignty, right? So how does Netskope deal with it in terms of, any forensic information that's generated from those DLP alerts?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ben. So any information that we get, so if we want to look at what's going on from an incident perspective and see actually why has a file been classified, why has data been classified as GDPR, then what we do is we use an API integration into your environment. So essentially, you would set up a Azure Blob storage or a SharePoint area where that forensic information is stored. That sits within your environment as a customer of Netskope. And then Netskope uses an API to pull that information out, just the metadata, so we can display this to say, okay, this file's been blocked. Okay, it's generated an incident. Here is a specific file, part of that file, which has triggered the alert. So you can see quickly and easily what has actually caused an alert. Why have we actually blocked this file? But all that fits within your environment.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, the customer has control of where that potentially sensitive forensic information is being stored. Great. In terms of, you obviously limited time to sort of showcase the solution today. So we looked at, uploading to the web, attachment to email. What about endpoint DLP? What sort of functionality does Netskope provide around protecting the endpoint?
Yeah, good question. And I touched on it in the presentation, is that it's very important to maintain that same level of control across all channels, whether that is, web access, email, and like you said, USB endpoints. So Netskope provides exactly the same control, exactly the same policy engine for files that you might transfer to a USB stick. So if we try to transfer that same file that I was trying to upload to Dropbox or to an email client over to a USB stick, then we can detect and we can block that activity. So you can provide the exact same controls, whether your data is going, to the cloud or it's going to USB. In addition, with the endpoint protection, we can also look at data which is being sent to a printer. So if you try and print this information, or if you try and save this information to a map drive or a XMB, DFS share, that sort of thing. So we provide the same level of controls, regardless of where you're trying to send that data.
Perfect, thanks, Tim. And I think that's the key thing, as you mentioned there, is obviously, the Netskope One platform, having one unified policy across all of those destinations. I mean, traditionally, in my dealings with various DLP solutions over the years, you may have had an endpoint DLP solution, you may have had an integration with a proxy for web traffic, you may be, using capabilities within a cloud service such as O365 or Google, but it's that sort of disparate sort of collection of technologies, multiple products, all with their own management tools. And Netskope One provides a unified tool across all of those sources and destinations and types of data. So with that, we are at time for today's webinar. So I'd just like to thank Tim for joining me to present, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. We will be sharing a recording for the webinar afterwards, and look forward to seeing you on webinar 3 in a few weeks' time. Thank you very much, everyone.